That game has given me about 10 separate heart attacks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be giving my fan reaction. And yes, I like the Cavaliers, but I'm a Steelers fan. We are going to be giving my fan reaction about this Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns game where the Steelers were victorious. The final score was 15-10. The Steelers overall, from what they were whenever they were 1-3, my goodness, they looked like so much of a better football team. Their offensive line played pretty solid. The running game is amazing. Najee Harris, I love that man. Pat Freiermuth, I love that man. Roethlisberger, he is not anything spectacular. He will not be spectacular for the rest of his career. But he is a serviceable quarterback right now. He is looking like a decent quarterback. And this team, from what they were when they were 1-3 to now, a completely different team. The play calling is much better the majority of the time. And overall, I'm very happy with how this team has progressed throughout the year. Very proud of this football team. We got to give credit to the Cleveland Browns. They played a great game. They have a great football team themselves. And, I mean, they're 4-4. They're last in the division right now. But, I mean, yet again, it's the AFC North. It's not a shame to be last in the AFC North if you still have a 500 record. But, yes, yet again, it is still a disappointing season for them thus far. But the Steelers were able to come away with this victory. It was such a great game. I mean, literally, I had 5 separate heart attacks, but there's just this one thing that bothers me now. Chris Boswell got injured this game, and you may be wondering, if you didn't watch the game, well, how did this happen, Brittenbaum? How did this team manage to sit there and have their kicker get injured? It's an interesting story. It was 3-3 going into the second half, or end of the second quarter. And the Steelers could have kicked a field goal, right? This was a defensive game, so all the points matter. And with the Steelers' offense, even though they are getting better, they're not the type of team that's just going to score touchdown after touchdown. They're going to kick field goals. Like, it's probably going to be a 50-50 touchdown to field goal percentage for this team, Pretty similar, because they're not an amazing offense, but they're definitely better, and they're serviceable. And with a great defense, they can win games, and that's what was demonstrated today. But the Steelers, they were going to kick a field goal, but Mike Tomlin and Matt Canada, they draw up a play, even though it was tied 3-3, that is very questionable. They went for a fake field goal. They went for a fake field goal. If they were going to try to go for a touchdown, leave your offense on the field. It's that simple. Leave your offense on the field. All right? We're not trying to fool anybody. It's more effective if you do that than have Chris Boswell throw the ball. And even worse, he got injured on a hit. You can argue with me if it was a late hit. Doesn't matter. Shouldn't have even been in that position. All right? Steelers can complain about the refs all they want. Cleveland can complain about the refs all they want. But at the end of the day, the result of this game was directly from the level of play on the field. Now, yes, there were calls here and there that were questionable, like, for both teams. And there were calls that were probably missed for both teams. That's just a part of the game. So who had more points at the end of the day? Pittsburgh. So at the end of the day, they won the football game. That you can tell me whatever you want about refs for either side. I'm not the type of fan that's going to sit there and blame the refs for stuff. Unless if it's something like, not because I'm a Steelers fan, but a good example, Jesse James catch. All right, that is complete BS. But yet again, still should have won that game or at least went to overtime, but that's not the point. But the Steelers, they faked the field goal. Boswell threw it up into triple coverage because he's a kicker. He can't read a defense. He threw it up into triple coverage to Zach Gentry, hoping that the 6'6" tight end would catch it, and he didn't. So the Steelers had a momentum factor in that point in the game on their side, and they were also going to most likely, if they scored this field goal, go up 6-3 going in half in a divisional rivalry game on the road. I would definitely take that. But Mike Tomlin decides it's such a great idea that we're going to sit here and we are going to fake the field goal. Now, we won this game, all right? And I certainly am not going to sit here and say that I would rather have like half of the coaches in the National Football League compared to Mike Tomlin, because I wouldn't. Tomlin's not a bad coach by any means. But let me tell you something. It's very similar to James Franklin. The structure of Penn State and the Pittsburgh Steelers, when it comes to the game of football, it's very similar. It's almost crazy. And as you know, I'm a fan of both teams. So it's very crazy how similar these teams are. But the Steelers coaching, it never wins them games anymore, okay? Tomlin won a Super Bowl, yes, but he inherited Bill Cowher's team and won. And then whenever he got a chance to build what was mostly his own team, his team, kept on choking. They kept choking. They couldn't get the job done. They came just short. And that's not a coincidence. That's not a coincidence. Now, you're not going to necessarily win a football game because of Mike Tomlin. You have seen, and Urinating Tree's not joking by this, you have seen how many times the high-end talent has bailed out Mike Tomlin. It's happened oh so many times. And if the Steelers lost this game because they were too scared to kick extra points because they didn't have a kicker because of a terrible play calling that resulted in a fake field goal that wasn't even converted, even if they did convert it, I'd be happy as heck. But that still doesn't mean that it was a good play call, right? If they lost because of that, that's at the fault of Mike Tomlin. That's at the fault of the people who call the plays, and Mike Tomlin is one of those people. Matt Canada is one of those people. The special teams coordinator for allowing that to even happen, because obviously he has a say in it. That's definitely, all the coordinators do, but especially those three. Those three people, they need to say something, because I don't know what the heck they were thinking. I don't know what monkeys are calling half of these plays. Like, it's 3rd down and 13, and we throw it 10 yards short of the line of game. Like, what are we doing? Like, I get every once in a while, because obviously the defense is expecting for a 3rd and 13 to be thrown by the first down marker. But almost every time, we just do a little dump-off pass. Like, are we even trying? But I'm not going to complain, because the Steelers won this game. But what I will say is that, just like James Franklin, it's my personal belief that the Steelers cannot, even if they're not a Super Bowl contender, all right? They could make the playoffs right now. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they won't. But they're not a Super Bowl contender. If they make the playoffs, they're going to lose. Maybe they'll win their first game. It really depends who they play and how they decide to play. But that's all I could see them doing, and that's the best-case scenario this season. But Mike Tomlin, they're not going to be good enough to win championships with this man at the helm. I really think that it doesn't matter who you give Tomlin. Tomlin is going to be a liability to the team. And although firing him would be too risky just because of the amount of, what if we find a coach that's bad and it puts us in a major setback? But if there's going to be a time to let Tomlin go, if we ever do, and I don't think we will, I'm not saying we should, but if we do, it should be whenever Ben retires after this season. But that's not going to happen. But Tomlin is, nevertheless, he is a liability to this football team. If we lost, that would have been a great reason why, because of the stupid play calling. And now what are we going to do? What if Boswell's out? All right, what if he's out for the coming weeks? What if he's out for the year? I hope he's not, but what if he is? All right, what if he comes back except he's banged up so he misses some important kicks? Whose fault is that? Tomlin's. He didn't directly injure him, but he's the one that called the play. So that play makes me mad, and it's very frustrating. But the Steelers, for some reason, their defense likes to come out at the beginning of halves and they look flat. Right? They were able to stand their ground in the red zone in the first drive of the game for the Browns and only allow a field goal, but started second half, Cleveland walked right down the field and scored a touchdown, no questions asked. They come out flat, but then they get it together. But this defense, man, they're the reason why this game was won. All right, this offense did what they had to do, but this defense gave the Steelers the opportunity to win this football game. All right, Rashard Higgins fumbling the ball, defense. That is the defense. The defense forced that fumble. All right, Baker Mayfield, now I know his receivers dropped some important passes, but at the end of the day, secondary's not there, then he's going to score a touchdown every play because no one's guarding him, all right? No one's guarding his receivers. But whenever the Steelers need to step up and make a play, this defense steps up and makes a play, all right? That's something that Baker Mayfield does not usually tend to do, and I think some Browns fans can tend to agree with that with me. Now, he's not a bad quarterback. He really is not a bad quarterback, and I just don't know. I don't know if I would call him average or above average because, like I said, with the resources that Mayfield has around him, and yes, some of them are injured right now. I'm not going to run away from that. Jack Conklin got injured in the middle of the game. Kareem Hunt's injured. Nick Chubb was back. But you would expect for him not to get maybe the full workload that he typically gets just because it's a game back from injury. But he still got a decent amount of touches, But with the amount of resources that Mayfield has around him, they should not be a 500 team, all right? I'm not saying they should be undefeated. They're allowed to lose football games. It's okay to lose a divisional game to a rival. I mean, the Steelers lost to the Bengals, and this was before we knew the Bengals were a good team. Now, granted, they just lost to the Jets. Yes. Thank you, New York. Because now the Steelers, they're the only team that has gained anything positive from this week because the Ravens are on a bye. The Bengals lost. The Browns lost. Steelers won. So the Steelers, they're third place in the division now. Cleveland's last place. They're 4-4. Steelers are 4-3, but even if they were 4-4, they would own the tiebreaker. So the Steelers, They win their first divisional game, and man, was that a game. I mean, that Pat Freiermuth catch for a touchdown out of his hands, then he catches it, all right? I love that man at Penn State. I love that man in Pittsburgh. Ebron's on the active roster. I have no idea why. I have no idea why we play Eric Ebron, all right? Just keep Pat Freiermuth as a starting tight end. If you want a 2 tight end formation, put in Zach Gentry. Ebron, thank you for your service. You should be gone at the conclusion of this year, maybe at the trade deadline if someone wants to trade for you for some reason. But yeah, Ebron should be gone after this year. But our drafting this year, pretty good. The offensive line had a pretty solid game. Myles Garrett did get a sack. He got pressure to the quarterback every now and then. But that's as to be expected. It's Myles Garrett. That man's a beast, whether you want to admit it or not. But the Steelers, they won this game. Roethlisberger, no interceptions today. I think I only saw about one throw this game where Ben had a bad throw. And, honestly, he has gotten better each week, in my opinion. I think he played a little bit worse in the Seattle game than he did in the Broncos game. But he's gotten better each week. This offense has gotten better each week. The play calling is competent on the offensive side of the ball. Special teams, apparently the play calling sucks because why did we fake that field goal? I mean, now if we miss kicks or we can't kick the football because we're scared and we go for it on 4th and 10 and give the offense a short field, that's only going to give our defense more of a workload. And if our defense falls apart, the rest of the team goes right down with it. But the Steelers, they won, man. Now, they won. I'm not going to sit here and act like they won the Super Bowl because they definitely didn't, but it feels good to beat the Browns, especially after the way the Steelers went out last year. And I think Cleveland would have won the game regardless. And I think it's good for their city, good for their franchise that they did. But the way the Steelers played in the first quarter of that game, Cleveland, the Steelers just fell flat on their faces, got ran over by a car that was driven by Mike Tomlin and Randy Fichtner, and they just literally sat there and they basically pulled a Plaxico Burress because they shot themselves in the foot. So, former Steeler, by the way, giant at the time when he did that. But the Steelers, that game, they certainly weren't doing themselves any favors. I think we can all agree on that. The Browns basically just had to sit there and say, sure, we'll take this win, and then they went away with it. And they played a solid game. They probably would have won that football game even if the Steelers didn't go out there and look like absolute crap. But the fact that the Steelers were able to go onto the road and beat Cleveland in First Energy Stadium in a game where whoever loses is last place in the division, and it's a determining factor for the Steelers of whether or not they have a winning record or a losing record, it really is a testament to how this team is. This team never dies. So, as a fan, if the Steelers, let's just say Steelers lose out somehow, right? And they go 4-13, right? They'd have great draft capital. They could draft a good quarterback. But this is not the type of team the Steelers are going to be, all right? At worst, they are going to be a team that's around 8-9. I'd say something like that. 7-10, 8-9. And that's not good draft capital. That's nothing that, unless if you're like the Patriots and get lucky with Mac Jones last year, that's not something that you're going to get a quality quarterback for, and that's who I think the Steelers should draft. They should draft a quarterback. I envision this being Ben's last year. It should be Ben's last year. All signs are pointing, especially his contract, are pointing towards this being Ben Roethlisberger's last season at the helm. And I appreciate his work. It's sad to see him digress. But these past few weeks, he's came to play. He's shown grit. He's showed heart. So has the rest of this football team. And the Steelers have faced adversity right in the face. They've ran right through it. And although I do think the Steeler way is sometimes a whole bunch of BS used as an excuse, I also think that this organization is an organization that never dies. So I've just accepted that at this point, it's playoffs or bust, because they're either going to get a mediocre draft pick, which won't help us at all, or we can make the playoffs, and if we lose, we lose. But it's better than having a mediocre draft pick anyways and not making the playoffs and not getting to experiencing that. So at this point, I feel like as Steelers fans, even though we always want our team to win, we know that necessarily if our team were to lose out somehow, it wouldn't be a bad thing for the future of the team. Not going to happen, all right? Every Steelers fan who wants this team to lose for whatever reason, stop. Because this team has to... They're not a type of team that's just going to sit there and roll over and die, all right? If they don't make the playoffs, they're going to still have a good enough record and not have a great draft pick. And if they make the playoffs, sure, they're not going to Super Bowl, but it's better. At this point, that's the best case scenario, is going to the playoffs, and that's what we should root for, because it's better than sitting at home in January, and it's a testament to how the Steelers were able to come through adversity. Now, I'm not saying they will or they won't. It's really a huge question. I feel like they're one of the teams in the NFL with the biggest question marks, because, yeah, they looked better against the Broncos and the Seahawks, but let's be real, they didn't play some of the best teams in the world. But they played a talented team and the Browns, and they beat them in First Energy Stadium in a game that wasn't important to both teams. And the Steelers, they faced adversity in the game. They faced adversity when they looked at their record. They faced adversity all over the place. They were able to go in there and get the job done. I'm so proud of what this team did today as we head into next week against, I believe, the Chicago Bears on what I believe to be Monday Night Football. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm pretty sure that's our next game. I know we play the Bears on Monday Night Football. Pretty sure it's next week. But Steelers get the win. They win. Browns lose. Steelers get their first divisional win. They're 1-1 in the division because they lost to Cincinnati in week 3. But compared to where this team was to where they are now, they are so much better. I actually have pride, and I am excited to watch them play because at this point, I don't know who they are, all right? They beat a good team. They just went out there and beat a good team on the road. So clearly they are much better than what they were at the beginning of the year. And it proves that they weren't just preying on inferior competition, that they actually were getting better. But they have to rack up wins. They have the toughest schedule in the league when it comes to statistics. So that Chiefs game, they played the Chiefs this year at the beginning of the year, and the way they were playing, the way at first looked like that game wasn't winnable. I don't know if they'll win that game, but it looks more winnable now. Some of these games look more obtainable, and some of them look less obtainable, like the Bengals game, per se. Yeah, we lost to them, but who would have thought that the Bengals were actually going to be out here and be a good team? They just lost to the Jets. Doesn't mean they aren't a good team. All right, it's disappointing for them, and maybe it's what turns around their season, and they go to the stinker. But necessarily, some of the games, that's what happens through the NFL. As the weeks are actually played out, and the games progress, you see that some teams you might have overestimated, some teams you might have underestimated. So at the end of the day, some games look easier for the Steelers than they did at the beginning of the year, and some games look harder. But they can go out there and they can have a winning record. Now, will they? I don't know. But let's just say they go 500 the rest of the way. They go 5-5, and I don't think they will. I think they're gonna have it's not going to be dead on 5-5, but maybe it will be. But let's just say, for the sake of reasoning and argument, they go 500 the rest of the year. That would mean they're 5-5. It would put them at a 9-8 record. So if they win 1 out of every 2 games, they'll still have a winning record. From how they looked at the beginning of the year to now, that's amazing. And if the AFC crumbles a little bit, that can maybe be good enough to make the playoffs. 10-7, probably. 11-6 can definitely get the job done. But I'm not sitting here and saying this team's going to make the playoffs, because they can collapse. They could go back to their old ways. I don't think they will. But they could. I'm not saying they're making the playoffs. I'm not saying they're not making the playoffs. But right now, the Steelers have a chance. And the way it looked, the way they were playing, they would not have won any of these last 3 games. If they got lucky, maybe one. But they've won all 3 of them. They came off the bye week. They didn't fall flat on their face like they usually do with Mike Tomlin. And you want to know something? You want to know something that really put a smile on my face? Whenever the Browns fans today in First Energy Stadium, they were chanting that the Steelers sucked, right? And obviously that's what fans do. They get rowdy at games. Do they mean it? Maybe, maybe not. Their bias does, but they know they're at least a decent team. Because they're at least a decent team. But Baker Mayfield, he had a late, I don't know if it was a late hit or not, but he got tackled on the way out of bounds. Someone pushed him. Was it a late hit or not? No idea. It's really all interpretation. I don't necessarily disagree with not throwing the flag on that one, because it wasn't anything brutal. But I would understand if they did throw it. But Baker Mayfield, right? He stands up. And you know what Baker Mayfield does? Whenever the play's over, just to get everyone mad, just to get everyone pumped up, but all the Steelers fans mad, he goes up there, he pumps his fist, he's like, yeah, yeah, and he pumps his fist, he's like, yeah, I have the fire to win this game. Jim Nantz is like, yeah, this guy has the power to win the game. He has the want, he has the power, he has the fire. And what does he do? Rashard Higgins gets the ball, fumbles. Baker Mayfield goes to the bench. Depressed. Then what happens? Baker Mayfield, game-winning drive, what is he doing? Yes, his receivers didn't do him much of a favor, but game-winning drive. What does the quarterback do at the helm of the Cleveland Browns that won them their first playoff game in almost since the 1990s? What does he do? Nothing. Steelers win. You tell me. When do you honestly think in a playoff scenario, if the Browns make it, that Baker Mayfield can sit there and drive this team down and win a game? I think they can win in spite of him. I think they can win with him. And sometimes he does contribute to their wins. Like the game against the Titans last year, played amazing. Probably the best game I've ever seen from that man. But he has not progressed hardly at all since his rookie year. And it's very disappointing. I don't even know what to think of him. There's some Cleveland fans that think they should keep him. There's some Cleveland fans that think he should be out and they should try to get someone better. If they could, why wouldn't they? Yes. If it's an older option, would they? I don't know. But he's such a weird quarterback because Mayfield, like I said, he's not bad. He's not amazing. He's not like Lamar Jackson. But he's also not like Zach Wilson this year. And I get it's his rookie year. I just use an example of someone who's playing horribly right now. And I also wouldn't say he's in the middle, but he just isn't. He doesn't have a clutch gene on him, in my opinion, right? He gets everywhere, and he's not as arrogant as he used to be, but he just gets so cocky sometimes. Like, yeah, we're gonna win, and he's allowed to show excitement. Don't get me wrong, but just the fashion that he did it, how he went out of the crowd, right? Of the crowd of people around him, right? And he didn't get the call, so he got mad. So he sprinted, accelerated, pumps his fist, and what does he do? His receiver fumbles the ball. Who comes out on top? Pittsburgh, his opponent. You know who he lost to? He lost to Ben Roethlisberger. Now, I'm not saying that Baker Mayfield's not going to go on Twitter and talk crap about his opponents. He knows better than that. But from what all the Browns fans were saying about Ben Roethlisberger, and it was over-exaggerated, but it wasn't necessarily false. The man is in a decline. He's getting better as this year progresses, but when it comes to how he was at the beginning of his career, and even just 2 years ago, well, he didn't play, so 3 years ago, to now, he is a worse quarterback. But everyone's like, oh, Ben's washed. Steelers getting the first overall pick. They're going to pick Spencer Rattler. Your quarterback just lost to him. He just lost to him at home. And yes, the quarterback's not playing defense. And yes, Baker Mayfield's a better quarterback than Ben Roethlisberger is right now, in my opinion. Although that gap is narrower than it was at the beginning of the year, definitely, because Ben was atrocious at the beginning of the year. But I don't know what you do with the Browns quarterback situation. I really don't. Because, you have to be grateful for the man. He won you your first playoff game. And he's not a bad quarterback. You can win with him. But most of the time, he's not going to be that huge reason why you win the football game. Every now and then he will be. But that's what every above-average quarterback does every now and then. They're the reason why. But most of the time, you just win or you lose. And if you lose, sometimes it's because of them, sometimes it isn't. But if you win, usually they contribute, obviously, but they're not like the huge reason why. They're not like, highlight play after highlight play. They're not usually the reason why. But Mayfield, man, it just puts such a smile on my face to see that man pump his fists. And then his receiver fumble the ball. Pumps his fists at our defense, and then our defense fumbles the ball. Who goes to the bench in despair? Not our defense, Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield goes over there in despair, right? Who sits there on his progressive commercials? They're funny commercials, right? He's allowed to make revenue. Make that dough, Baker. Go you. I don't care. I'm just saying it for the sake of the meme. I really don't care. But he has so many progressive commercials that you would think he's this superstar quarterback, but he's just not. All right? Mayfield, he's the best thing that's happened to Cleveland since LeBron James. Let's be honest. And that doesn't mean he's amazing either. But he has so many progressive commercials, but he hasn't truly progressed since his rookie year. What a pun, go me, But the Steelers, they beat him. The same quarterback, and I don't like the Steelers fans going on Twitter. I'm just going to get this out there right now. I don't like them going on Twitter saying the Browns is the Browns. The Browns are not the Browns, all right? Right now, they're mediocre, and honestly, though, if they keep playing like this, they're going to miss the playoffs. They're not going to be a terrible team, but they'll miss the playoffs. But if they keep playing like this, I'm not saying that they will or won't, right? Because let's be real, the Browns have a ton of talent on their roster, and they could easily turn this thing around. But right now, Cleveland, I would say they're looking like a Vikings or Falcons type team. The definition of mediocrity, aside from the Falcons run in 2016, obviously. Because right now they just look like a mediocre team that's not going to be good enough to make the playoff. And is that the factory of sadness? Necessarily no. But compared to what the Browns were last year to what they were now, they certainly have digressed. They certainly look worse. And they certainly look like they're returning to their old form. And that, even though they never truly will, because this team's not going 0-16. This team's not going 3-13 or 1-15. In translation to the 17-game schedule that starts now. They just are going back to their old ways. And they're kind of reminding me of the 2019 Browns, except better, obviously. Because the 2019 Browns was a hot mess, and they weren't very great. This year, they're good. They're not a hot mess, but they're just not great so far. They've lost games. Some of them they should have won, and they're 4-4. I mean, looking at that record, you have to be disappointed if you're a Cleveland Browns fan. But don't ever say the Browns is the Browns. They're not the old Browns. They're new Browns. They look worse than last year, and I will admit, as a Steelers fan, it's funny to see them kind of revert back to their old ways a little bit. But put some respect on their name, all right? Please put some respect on the Cleveland Browns name, because you say that now, but that's what Juju said, and they turn around and beat you. Shut up, have respect for your opponent, whoever they are. Even if it was the 0-16 Browns that you're playing next week, have some respect for your opponent. They're all professional players. But the Steelers won. Baker Mayfield, keep pumping your fist, baby, because you never come in the clutch. I have not seen this man come in the clutch in the past 2 years. Okay? He didn't have to come in the clutch last year. The Steelers fell over on their faces, and the rest of his team played well. Mayfield just had to sit there and facilitate the thing. He didn't have an amazing game, but he did what he had to do. And hey, that's okay. Quarterback doesn't have to have Patrick Mahomes type numbers, other than the amount of interceptions that he's thrown this year, but to win games. If you win, you win. And that's all that I care about as a football fan, and if I'm a fan of that team. But the Browns, man, they have fallen to the Steelers in First Energy Stadium. They're 4-4 last in the division. Steelers are 4-3, third in the division. And they look like a much better football team. Mayfield pumping his fist on the way home. We keep going through the Baker Mayfield cycle. I'm sure you guys have seen that meme, and honestly, it's quite true in my opinion. And I'm sure most Browns fans, if not all Browns fans, are going to agree with that. That meme is very true. Mayfield is a huge question mark. The Browns team right now is a huge question mark. The Steelers have some question marks themselves, but they're in a positive direction, where the Browns are in a negative direction right now. And that's something that you love to see. So Big Brother won, and this is definitely, obviously, the Browns, they can turn around and they can beat us whenever we play them later this year. And obviously they can. That should be another competitive, great game, and I'm excited for it. But Steelers, they're not going to get swept. Everyone's like, Ben's washed. Browns fans are like, oh, easy dub. That they weren't necessarily saying that the past 2 weeks, but they're like, oh, Pittsburgh calling us Schittsburg and all that stuff. Well, guess what? Guess who just lost, Cleveland? Yeah, your team lost. Your team just lost, all right? They lost. You lost to washed Big Ben. He's not the Big Ben of old, and he's certainly not a new Big Ben, a new different type of play style. But he's still kicking, and he's still doing the job that he needs to do now. He's limiting his mistakes, and he looks like a decent quarterback right now, something you love to see. This team, man, they never die, so we got to root for a playoff run. But the Steelers, they beat the Browns, and do you guys hear a noise? Oh my God, what is that?
Fun times in Cleveland again. Still Cleveland.
Oh.
Cold down to Cleveland town, everyone. Under construction since 1868. See our river that catches on fire. It's so polluted that all our fish have AIDS. We see the sun almost 3 times a year. This guy has at least 2 DUIs. Blacks look like a Scooby-Doo ghost town. Don't slow down in East Cleveland or you'll die. Our economy's based on LeBron James. Buy a house for the price of a VCR. Our main export is crippling depression. We're so retarded that we think this is art. It could be worse though, at least we're not Detroit. We're not Detroit.
It's certainly true you guys are not Detroit, because let me tell you, the Lions, I feel bad for any person who's a fan of the Detroit Lions. That's just a terrible situation to be in. But you know what? Just one more time, Baker Mayfield. Pump your fist again. I dare you. I dare you to pump that fist again, Baker Mayfield. Go ahead and pump it. Right? Act like you're a quarterback who can actually be compared with Lamar Jackson. Don't ever sit here and tell me that you're going to be up here again. You're not. All right? You're not bad. You're not amazing. Okay? You're just above average, in my opinion, and I'll give that to you. Some people think you're average. I think you're above average. But let me tell you something, right? Pump your fist in the air. Be as arrogant as you want. But guess what? Guess who won? Not your team. Your team's 4-4. Guess who won today? The Steelers with Wash Big Ben. And you know what? Mayfield, I dare you. Go on, do it next time. Next time you pump your fist in the air just to be arrogant. Remember what happened the first time you did it, because karma is real. Here we go.